Every railway rule exists because someone once died. Stop at a red signal. Slow down at yellow. Proceed on green. Every railway engineer learns those rules before they're ever allowed inside a locomotive. Most of them make perfect sense. But there is one rule that appears in the operating manual of several rail networks around the world without any technical explanation. If an experienced signal operator refuses to clear a track, leave the signal red. Even if every system says the track is clear. Most engineers never think about that sentence until the night they need it. For 34 years, David Mercer had worked inside the East Junction Signal Control Center. He wasn't the youngest operator. He wasn't the fastest. But every dispatcher, engineer, and supervisor trusted one thing above everything else. If David refused to clear a train, he had a reason, even if he couldn't explain it. On a cold Tuesday night, David was training a newly certified signal operator named Ethan. The shift had been uneventful. Freight trains, 2 commuter services, 1 maintenance vehicle. Everything exactly as scheduled. The control board glowed quietly across the room. Every occupied track was marked in red, every empty section in green. No alarms, no failures, no delays. David leaned back in his chair. Looks like you'll get an easy first night. Ethan smiled. I'll take easy. A few minutes later, Train 614 checked in. Control, this is 614. Approaching East Junction. Requesting clearance. Ethan immediately looked at the panel. Track 3. Clear. Switches aligned. No conflicting traffic. Everything on the screen indicated the same thing. Safe to proceed. He reached toward the green clearance button. David's hand stopped him. No. Ethan looked over. What? Leave it red. Ethan frowned. The track is clear. I know. The switches are locked. I know. The occupancy circuit is empty. I know. Ethan looked back at the display. Every single indicator agreed. There wasn't another train within nearly 20 miles. He lowered his voice. So, why are we holding him? David never looked at the screen. He kept staring at the section of track beyond the windows. I don't trust it. Ethan almost laughed. You don't trust the signaling system? David answered without hesitation. No. I don't trust green. The room fell silent. Train 614 called again. Control. Still waiting on clearance. Ethan glanced at David. He's going to ask why. I know. So what do I tell him? David pressed the radio button himself. Train 614. Remain at your current signal. Await further instructions. The engineer sounded confused. Control. Is there traffic ahead? David answered. No. Track obstruction? No. Signal failure? No. Another pause. Then the engineer asked the question Ethan had been thinking ever since David stopped his hand. If the line is clear, why are you keeping us here? David looked once more at the glowing green section on the control panel. Then he quietly replied, because sometimes green doesn't mean empty. The radio fell silent. Ethan stared at him. For the first time that night, he wasn't questioning David anymore. He was questioning the rule book. Because every monitor in the room, every sensor, every signal, every system said the exact same thing. Track 3 was completely clear. Only one man believed it wasn't. Train 614 remained at the signal. 1 minute. Then 2. Then 5. The engineer called again. Control. We've been stopped for 6 minutes. Can you tell us what's happening? David answered calmly. Negative. Remain where you are. The engineer didn't argue. Experienced engineers knew something important. If a veteran signal operator broke normal procedure, there was usually a reason, even if nobody else could see it. Ethan couldn't stay quiet any longer. David, we're delaying an entire corridor. There isn't a single occupied block ahead. David kept watching the panel. I know. The axle counters are clear. I know. The track circuits are clear. I know. The switches are locked. I know. Ethan sighed. Then what are we waiting for? David didn't answer. Instead, he stood up, walked to an old filing cabinet in the corner of the control room, unlocked the bottom drawer, and removed a thin gray folder. The paper label had almost faded away. Only 4 words were still readable. Operation East Junction. The date beneath it was nearly 20 years old. David placed the folder on the desk. I was sitting exactly where you are. Ethan looked up. My first month on the job. The operator training me pressed the green button. David slowly opened the file. Most of the pages had been removed. Others were heavily blacked out. Only a few paragraphs remained readable. One sentence had been highlighted decades earlier. No fault was found with the signaling system. Ethan frowned. So what happened? David didn't answer immediately. He turned another page. Another line had survived the redactions. Both engineers reported a valid green signal. Ethan read it again. Both. David nodded. There should only have been one. The room fell silent. Outside, Train 614 continued waiting. The radio remained quiet. Ethan looked back at the modern control panel. This system is completely different now. It was upgraded years ago. David nodded 3 times. So whatever happened back then can't happen again. David looked directly at him. That's exactly what every investigation concluded. And yet, he gently tapped the folder. They still changed one rule. Ethan turned to the last remaining page, at the very bottom, beneath dozens of technical signatures. Someone had typed a single instruction. If an experienced signal operator refuses to clear a signal, the signal shall remain a danger until independently verified. No explanation. No technical justification. Just a new rule. Ethan closed the folder. So you think it's happening again? David looked back at the control panel. I don't know. I've waited 19 years, hoping I'd never have to find out. At that exact moment, another voice came over the radio. Not train 614, a freight train, much farther north. Control. This is freight 903. We're approaching East Junction. Ethan checked the display. His stomach tightened. According to the system, Freight 903 wasn't anywhere near East Junction. It was still more than 40 miles away. He looked at David. David had already reached for the emergency stop controls, without saying a single word. David's hand hit the emergency stop controls. Every signal protecting East Junction turned red. Train 614 acknowledged immediately, holding at red. A second later, Freight 903 answered. We've stopped. Ethan looked back at the control panel. Freight 903 still wasn't supposed to be anywhere near the junction. According to every system, it wasn't. The line remained closed for nearly an hour. Track inspectors walked every section. Signal engineers tested every relay. Maintenance crews inspected every switch. Nothing. No train. No vehicle. No damaged rail. No fault. The railway was exactly as the control board had shown it. Safe. The investigation lasted 4 days. Every signal command was recovered. Every relay activation was checked. Every control input was verified. The result never changed. David had refused a perfectly valid green signal. His decision had delayed 2 trains. Nothing more. He received a formal written warning. He signed it, folded it once, placed it inside his locker, and reported for work the following night. 6 months later, David retired. Nobody replaced his judgment, only his chair. Ethan took the night shift. The old control board had been replaced. The software had been upgraded. The signaling hardware was new. Everything David had once distrusted had become even more advanced. Before leaving on his final morning, David stopped beside Ethan's desk. For a moment, it looked as if he wanted to explain everything. Instead, he only said one sentence. If you ever feel the need to keep a signal red, don't argue with yourself. Then he left. Neither of them mentioned the incident again. Years passed. Ethan became the senior operator. New trainees arrived. The railway continued running every day. Millions of passengers. Thousands of trains. Nothing unusual ever happened again. Until a trainee reached for a green signal one quiet night. Ethan stopped his hand. "Leave it red." The trainee looked at the control panel. "The track is clear." "I know." "The switches are locked." "I know." "The signal is green." "I know." The trainee waited. Finally, he asked the same question Ethan had asked years earlier. "Then why?" Ethan looked out toward the dark railway. For several seconds, he didn't answer. Because after all those years, he still didn't know. At last, he quietly repeated the only thing David had ever taught him. Sometimes, green doesn't mean empty.